Welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm your host, Amanda. Join me each week as I rediscover my life's meaning, my passions, and my place in this world after leaving behind the only dream I've ever known. If you are dealing with self-loss, identity changes, career transitions, or you are still trying to figure out your life's purpose, then you're not alone. Join me. Wanderers are always welcome. Hey everyone, welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. This is your host, Amanda. How's everybody doing? Hopefully good. It's a lazy Sunday here in Nashville, Tennessee, while I'm recording. I wanted to hop on here. I had something kind of heavy on my heart, and I'll be honest, I have no idea if I will ever publish this episode, but I've realized that when an idea comes to me, I need to act on it, or at least when ideas for the podcast in particular come to me, I need to act on them because those are sometimes the most powerful episodes and receive the most direct feedback where somebody feels comfortable enough to reach out to me about it. And so I had a topic in mind because it was two parts. The first part occurred on Thursday, this past Thursday, and the second part that I wanted to talk about occurred just about an hour ago or so. And the emotions that come from them are related. They play off of each other a little bit. And so I wanted to explain that so that way you could follow my train of thought here. But also selfishly, I wanted to record a message so that way in the future, if I ever wanted to come back to this moment, or if I ever really needed that mental kick in the butt, I could listen to myself and I could hear her speak words to power. And I haven't acknowledged that in a while, at least not on the show, that I have done that over and over again. Every single episode, in some way or another, I am speaking my truth to power. Even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when I'm not entirely sure what to say. But I wanted to go over this in case there's anybody else out there in the world that also feels this way or who is doubting themselves in the same way. So I apologize if it sounds scripted. This time, I most likely am going to read just straight from my notes because I want to make sure that what I'm saying it exactly how I need it to be said, exactly how I want the message to be received, ideally received. So bear with me. So let me tell you the backstory and we'll get into the meat of it. The juice. I'm recording on a Sunday. This conversation, part one conversation, happened on the previous Thursday, so 4 days ago. And I was talking to a really close friend of mine, and they are going through an unexpectedly horrendous situation with a relationship ending that was unexpected and very drastic, very quickly, and things are changing every day. And they weren't ready to tell me until then. And we spent the better half of, 2 to 3 hours on the phone catching up and discussing this change and how it had affected my friend and what they were thinking and feeling and going to do next and how they wanted to approach the problem, but how difficult it had been and devastating emotionally, physically, mentally. It was going to be very, very taxing. And right now, things were hard, but they were about to get harder. And they know that they needed to prepare. And I did everything I could to be a good listener, to just be there, to be a shoulder to cry on, to make a joke, to bring some levity, but essentially just to be there to listen, to let them share their story and share what they were thinking and what they were feeling. And at the end of the conversation, the friend, wanted to hear about me, wanted to hear about what I had been dealing with or what had been up with me, because it had been months since we had caught up. And I tried to downplay myself. I downplayed what I had been doing on the podcast. I downplayed things at work. I, tried not to. I was worried about two things. One, I didn't want to bring up what I considered to be a problem or what I considered to be things I was struggling with, because I kept thinking, well, there's nothing going on with me. I'm not actively going through a particular problem right now. Like, my struggles or my difficulties are not as important. They're not as traumatic as what you're dealing with. So like, I can't I can't contribute, or I can't compare what's going on with me, because it's nowhere near important. Like, we should be focused on you, not me, because what I'm dealing with is trivial. And the friend, in their infinite gracious wisdom, said, okay, I need you to do something for me. You have got to stop with that comparative trauma response. And they said, I've learned this through therapy and through my own experiences, but when you downplay what situations or things that happen to you because you can't compare, you end up telling yourself that you're essentially telling yourself that you're not important. You are not dealing with whatever it is that is going on in your life, because you're constantly being told that somebody else somewhere else has it worse off, and therefore you should be grateful with what's going on. You should be grateful for what's going on with you, because it could always be worse. It could always be, there's always somebody else in the world that has it worse off than you. And they said, while that may be technically true, it doesn't mean that what's happening to you isn't worth talking about, or it doesn't mean that I asked that question out of just trying to be polite. Like, I asked it because I genuinely care about what's happening to you. And I've known you your whole life, and you do that. I saw you grow up, and I know that you were taught that. Maybe not intentionally in a bad way, but you were taught that you have to be grateful and show, happiness and gratitude and positivity all the time, when there's always somebody else that has it worse off. So that comparative trauma loop probably continues in your head to this day, and you can't do that. And they admitted that they had stayed in their particularly bad situation for a long time because they had played the comparative trauma game that, oh, well, my relationship's fine. There are other people that have it worse off, that are going through worse situations than me. Mine's just a phase, or mine will get resolved as long as I end up doing X, Y, or Z for my partner. They'll change, they'll stop, they'll whatever. And playing the comparative trauma game probably extended their healing process longer than necessary, because they were unable to see the reality for what it was and realize that their trauma was significant and held value because it was happening to them. And if you, as a person, don't inherently hold value, then how are you going to know? how else are you going to know that the experiences that you're going through hold value too, right? Like, so it was this horrible vicious cycle that the two of us were talking about, that like, because we believed we were worthless, we let these situations happen to us, or these types of traumas or these types of conversations happen to us over and over and over again, because we would constantly do the comparison game and think, oh, well, what's happening to me, it's not as big of a deal, or it's not important to address because it's not as bad as it could have been, or very well could be if I were to do this again or to continue this way or whatever. And it struck me that night when my friend said that to me, that, you are not morally better if you focus on the positive versus the reality of your situation. It doesn't make you better than me. It doesn't make me better than you. All it does is warp your perspective and possibly force you to stay in a situation that's not beneficial for longer. Get traumatized for longer because you are not doing what you need to do to break that cycle of perspective, comparison perspective. And I realized through that conversation with my friend that I held beliefs about myself that weren't necessarily true for years, because I was told growing up, quote, it's not that bad, But honestly, listeners, wanderers, sometimes it is bad. Sometimes you are in a really messed up situation and you deserve to have your feelings validated and to not be forced to keep things inside, or your perspectives or your wants or your needs or your need to heal inside, or closed off or not talked about, simply because you're trying to make sure everybody else is comfortable in a certain situation, or you've been told that you have to make other people comfortable around you, and that making other people uncomfortable is not proper or demure or cutesy or whatever. But I promise you, you deserve to have your feelings validated, and you deserve to not have to try to make everybody else comfortable all day or all the time to the detriment of your own ability to heal. And I think I suppressed or put up with a lot more in my life because of that mindset, because of that thought process, because of that comparison, a different version of the comparison game, but more of the comparison trauma game, where it's kind of like, oh, mine is not that bad, and I'm never going to try and one up somebody else's issues because I think I'm strong enough. I can just deal with it on my own, or I can just deal with it later, or whatever. And I didn't realize how much maybe that was bugging me until this weekend. Sometimes just having conversations with certain people that you are important to you in your life, sometimes you just hear a message differently, or you're finally in the right place at the right time to be able to receive whatever that message is or whatever that lesson is. And so this weekend, I've realized that there have been times where it's really hard for me to accept compliments about the podcast and things, because I told myself that what happened to me in Philadelphia and DC wasn't that bad. That I shouldn't be that upset that my career didn't work out the way that I thought it would, or it was supposed to, or that the harassment and animosity that I felt and received was just to be expected in a competitive environment like that. and in a law enforcement space where everybody's traumatized all the time, everybody's on high alert, everybody's got adrenaline pumping constantly. You don't get to relax in national security. That's not a thing ever. And so I just accepted that the way I felt was just a universal thing. It was inherent to the job, and that the way I was being treated was just normal. And that's not necessarily true. I was at an event. On Saturday night, and I was meeting a lot of people in the marketing industry and a lot of new people that I had never met before. And they would come up and, introduce themselves, and we would chat and do whatever. And one person I chatted with for a while, and he asked me, so what do you do outside of work? And what are things you like to do? And so, of course, I listed off like the stupidest things I could think of. I'm really close to my family. We all have dogs, so I end up being the family dog watcher a lot. I go to the gym. That's pretty much it. I telework from home. I don't get out much. And he was like, oh, come on. Like, surely you'd like to do things for fun or whatever. And I told him about the podcast, and he goes, okay, well, that's cool. Like, let's hear about that. And then he asked more questions about it. And I finally just had to admit that, like, I don't brag about, I'm not a braggy person. I'm not a boastful person. And I think part of the reason I didn't bring up the podcast first is that humility kind of thing, where it's like ingrained into me that you don't need to make other people uncomfortable, or you don't need to, being boastful is not what, polite, attractive young ladies are supposed to do. But I also think part of it was that the self-doubt that I still have in regards to the show kind of stems from thinking, what gives me the right to talk about how to change your life or how to transform your dreams if the things that I went through and continue to go through now, what if they weren't that big of a deal? What if what happened to me is not actually serious or significant or anything like that? I'm not special by any means. I know that. I don't have some miraculous international harrowing story where I, pull myself up by my bootstraps situation in the middle of a war-torn country where, my parents died when I was little and I couldn't go to school, and, I made my way, climbed from the bottom, now I'm here situation. It's not like that. I did live, and I do live in a incredibly privileged situation. I had a really good upbringing. I had good parents that were there and involved in my life, who loved me, who took care of me, who helped me go to school, who helped me chase my original dreams and stuff, who wanted me to be successful. So how could I possibly be the right person to talk about these topics? What gives me the right to start a podcast about transforming your life, changing the trajectory of your purpose and your future by taking risks for yourself? If whatever happened to me is not as bad as what's happened to other people. But I realized, over this weekend that my friend was right. That comparative trauma loop, that comparative trauma perspective doesn't help me. It helps me be polite, right? Like, it helps me not bring up topics or things or feelings in the wrong moments, Like, I can read a room and know, hey, maybe don't spill your guts about being stalked and nearly pulled into vans multiple times in Philadelphia, or how many murders were committed on your street and all these. Don't open that as the dinner party topic. Don't open with that one, but try and get to know other people instead of your stuff. I realized my friend was right. Despite starting the show, I do still downplay a lot of how I really feel and what I really want out of my life and what I'm really excited about, what really makes me happy, but also what still makes me really sad. What I still struggle with, with validating my own feelings, with learning to trust my gut, and how scary that feels, because I don't know if I'm listening to the right voice, but I'm trying really hard to lean into that when I feel those things in my body or I hear whatever the divine message might be. I'm finally getting to a place in my life where I'm leaning into my gut or the voice, and I'm doing what it says, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else on the outside. And so I had a conversation recently with my parents. This was kind of part 2, so that was earlier tonight. And I had been telling them, plans that I had for myself and things I was going to try and do this year and what I wanted to accomplish. And they, of course, graciously wanted to offer their help and their assistance. But I think they were worried that I was only motivated by one thing. And maybe they didn't fully understand what my end goal is. And that's okay. I don't expect them to fully understand, because I know from the outside looking in, I'm doing something that they've never even thought of before. They've never tried before. So it's strange. It's strange to watch your child create and build something, but it's also exciting. So I think they meant well, but they tried to offer alternatives, even though I had already told them, like, this is what I've been thinking about for weeks. This is what I believe is the right thing to do. This is the only way I can figure out how to make it work. And if you're open to it, I think we could do it together. And so I think they were maybe a little worried I might have been jumping the gun under pressure. And when they offered their suggestion, it started to upset me. And I wasn't upset by their suggestion, but I think I was upset because my body was afraid that I was going to back out. I think my body was afraid that I was going to back out from what I had already promised the voice I would do. And I'm saying the voice, insert intuition, insert gut feeling, insert whatever. But I wasn't upset at my parents, because all they were doing was offering assistance, like an alternative form to get me to the same end goal. They just thought of another path option. But I started to cry and I started to get upset, and I think I kept my composure, but I think they could also tell that I was upset. But I think the conversation upset me because, or the conversation elicited a response in this manner, because I think my body was afraid I would back out. And it's almost that kind of moment in my life where it's just like, I am finally getting to a place where I can lean into my gut and listen to it, and I'm doing what it says, even if it doesn't make any sense to anybody else on the outside. And I knew that because I got upset in that conversation, it meant that my body already believes what I've been telling it. that if I want to change my life, then I have to invest in what I believe in. And I believe in making the world a better place by helping people never feel the way that I did, never feel the way that I do now. I know I won't prevent people from having these emotions or from people experiencing loss and identity crises and career transitions and their what now moments. I'm never going to stop what now moments from happening. I will never be able to prevent these emotions from ever happening again. And I will never be able to stop what now moments from occurring in my life or someone else's life. But for whatever reason, I am finding a lot of meaning out of at least trying to create a roadmap for myself so that way I can share it with others. Or at a bare minimum, I want to open the door for them to decide whether or not they want to walk through it. And I can't control what happened to me in the past or the decisions that I made previously, but I can control how I respond in the here and now. And so over the last couple of days, the conversations that I've had with people, they've helped me realize I want to take risks. I want to do things that other people my age are not doing. And if there's ever a time in your life where you find something that you believe in with every fiber of your being, you have to lean into that. I believe that now more than ever, especially after talking to my parents tonight. If there's ever a time in your life where you find something that you believe in wholeheartedly with every fiber of your being, you've got to lean into that. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's, your hobby or you're cooking or you're creating art or music or you're excelling in nursing school or medical school or you've always, for whatever reason, you want to be a dentist. I don't know. You enjoy banking, you enjoy investing, you enjoy learning from financial content creators. And so you want to build your own content page dedicated to whatever it is that brings you joy. It doesn't matter. But that's kind of how you start to figure out what it is your purpose might be in your life, is where you find something that no matter what day it is, how you felt that day, whatever it is you did that day, whatever it is that's going on in your life, when you come back to that thing, you feel centered, you feel aligned, you feel like you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And that's rare. That feeling is really fucking rare. And so this year I'm trying really hard not to back out, not to avoid a risk or do something that seems odd or different or confusing to outsiders simply because I care about what those people might think, or being worried about whether or not the path I'm taking is the right way to go about my path. But the problem is, if I don't take some direction, I'm never going to figure out what the right direction is. I have to at least try. And so do you. And so that was really the message I had, was just that if you're making those mistakes like I am and you have that comparative trauma mixtape in your head where you're not allowing yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling or deal with whatever it is that you're going through or did go through in your past, if you're downplaying what happened to you, or you're downplaying what you are currently struggling with because you don't want to make other people feel bad, or you don't want to make other people uncomfortable with what it is that you want to discuss, you got to tread lightly. This extreme gratitude society that we're in, yes, thinking about positive things helps you reverse negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are 10 times more vicious and likely to stay in your brain, so you have to combat them effectively and directly. I'll give you that. But just like any other pendulum swing, if you're moving too far to the left in the toxic positivity area where you downplay how you really feel and then never actually address the problem at hand because you don't want to be a burden to whoever it is you think you're about to be a burden to. The only person you are beholden to is yourself. And you are not morally better by only focusing on the positives and completely ignoring the reality of your situation. Now, I think there's obviously ways where you can acknowledge the reality of what happened to you and how you feel about it by using positive coping techniques, but downplaying what happened to you just because you don't think it's as traumatic as it would have somebody else's life story is doesn't mean that your life story didn't have meaning or purpose or a lesson for you to learn from it. And I think as soon as you're able to change that tape in your head, that comparative trauma tape, you'll actually be able to open the right doors for you to deal with whatever it is you need to deal with. And as you start to lighten your load mentally and emotionally, you're going to start having a whole lot more room for the creative side of things, a whole lot more room for you to lean into that thing that brings you so much joy, to lean into that project or that side hustle or that creative outlet, whatever it is. You're going to free up so much more time for you to do whatever it is you believe in, to learn how to listen to your gut, you know? And so I hope that if you have something like that in your life right now, if you ever find yourself with something that you believe in, with every fiber of your being, I hope you lean into that. And if you haven't found it yet and you're still wandering around, trying to find your life's purpose or trying to find meaning out of whatever it is you want to do for the rest of your life, then I hope it does happen for you. I know it'll happen for you. I just hope that once it does, you are brave enough to be as delusional as I am. To think that you can turn your passion into something that helps other people, that maybe makes the world a better place in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just your small corner of the universe. When it happens for you, I hope you're brave enough to be as delusional as I am. Anyway, that's what was on my heart tonight. It was just that we've got to stop doing the comparative trauma game. You've got to validate how you really feel. Even if nobody else will, then find a way to address whatever's going on deep down in your soul. Because you will never grow the longer you keep shit buried in there. Get those skeletons out of the closet, shake them up, dust them off, send them on their way. It's time for you to make room for what you were meant to do, for who you were meant to become. This is the year to take some risks on yourself. And I hope you'll join me in that journey too. But that's all I have for you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if it's not going so well, then play this episode over again. And just remember that everything in your life is temporary. The pain, the happiness, the slow moments, the fast moments, the transition periods, the growth periods like this. So if you're at what feels like a really long tunnel of shitty, mixed sack terribleness, it'll come to an end. But you got to be a little bit delusional like me. You got to hold out hope, and you got to be willing to not downplay whatever it is you are dealing with. Because whatever it is you are dealing with is important because it's happening to you. And you deserve to live a life where you have purpose and meaning and have found something that you believe in with every fiber of your being. So that's it. I love you, mean it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for listening to all of my delusional conversations and pep talks and super sappy pep talks. It's kind of a dark version, dark episode tonight, but I needed to say it. I needed to admit to myself out loud why I felt the way I felt and why I reacted the way I reacted to things. I've broken too many promises to myself in the past, and I've let things slide when they shouldn't have. And I think my body is fed up. I think it really is. It doesn't want me to let it slide anymore. Put myself, put my emotions, put my wants and my needs to the side and back out of any more promises. I can't do that. So, neither should you. Anyway, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, leave a review, share this with a friend, share the show. Anytime you guys post about it on your Instagram or your social media, I really appreciate it. Getting the word out, honestly, is the best way to help us grow. Sharing this with your friends and your family, anybody else that might be dealing with similar things or going through a traumatic time or a really difficult transition or change in career, change in their relationship. They don't really know where to turn or what to do next. This is just a show that commiserates with that and with that mentality and holds space for people that are struggling with figuring out what it is they want to do in life. And it's a universal feeling and it's terrifying to be so lost, but this is really important. Talking about these things are really important. So anytime any one of you subscribes, anytime any one of you shares the show with friends or talks about it, I promise I am eternally grateful. I will be forever grateful for any of you that have done that and believe in this as just as much as I do. So I really, really do appreciate it. But yeah, leave 5 stars. You can do comments on Spotify directly onto the episodes. You can do the 5-star rating and a review on Apple. And I appreciate every single one of you that does those things. Thank you so much. All my contact info will be in the show notes. You can reach out to me at hello@podcastforthelost.com. And I'll chat with y'all soon. And remember, wanderers are always welcome.